Welcome to Hail Varsity Radio, the voice of Husker Nation. Insight, opinion, expertise, with the biggest and best names talking Nebraska across the state. Join the show on Twitter at Hail Varsity and at Schmidt_radio. Call in at 402-466-ESPN or 1-800-825-5865. Here's Chris Schmidt.
Welcome to it, Roadshow Friday. It's Hail Varsity Radio. We're live here at the Hail Varsity Club in La Vista, getting you ready for a football weekend. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, and Connor Clark. Numbers to get in can join us today on Hail Varsity in La Vista, 466-3776, 466-3776. Toll free around the state, 1-800-825-5865. A lot to debate, like gas station hot dogs. Deion Sanders, his head coach in Nebraska. That's the rumor today, dispelled by some good sources. But it was fun to think about. We'll get into that. Can watch us here, not only live at the Hail Varsity Club in La Vista. We're just kind of snuggled in between Cabela's and Embassy Suites. But also we're streaming here on the StreamYard setup with ESPN Lincoln Facebook and ESPN Lincoln Twitter. Can also check out Hail Varsity Radio's Twitter handle at HVarsity Radio. Email the show, Chris at hailvarsity.com. And let's get to the lineup set for you today. Gregg Henson, longtime Michigan insider, going to join us around 4:25. Andrew Rodgers of Hurrdat Sports checks in around 4:40. The pride of Fairbury, Bill Doleman, at 5 o'clock. And then somewhere in Detroit, we will run down Brady Oltmans and then Clauseborne with us for the Friday forecast. And guys, it's been quite interesting as Nebraska is trending. First and foremost, when and why does Nebraska trend? Typically it's been after a debilitating what just happened loss. Now it's trending.
Or do not forget the debilitating why did he just say that quote from Scott Frost. That was another big reason.
Fair. So it's either what's said or done, okay, after a loss or what happened on the field. So Nebraska's trending because the former Ohio State wide receiver coach, Smith, first name Zachary Smith, the guy that Urban defended and then got pretty much moved out because of, has a podcast. Zach went on there and has some inside info that Deion's already agreed to terms. Do I have that right? Is that the layout? I don't pay a ton of attention to Zach Smith, quite frankly. But, yeah, it's fun to think about Deion Sanders and Nebraska. It's been shot down, and it's been shot down by Deion. So, question is this. Did you love it or did you hate it? Because Deion's the second name this week. There was some smoke around Gary Patterson for about 24 hours, fellas. We'll get into a little bit of the game, but this carousel is quite fun to talk about, honestly. And, man, you think about two monster brands, Nebraska and Coach Prime, and so far so good in year two for him at Jackson State. Does that translate to Big Ten? I think it would have been cool to watch. I think he could probably do well, but I'm thinking if Deion Sanders makes the move, and when Deion Sanders makes the move from Jackson State, it's probably just a little bit east to an Auburn or somewhere in the SEC, Florida State. I just don't know. Here's the scales that I'm staring at. It's the brand that Deion totally respects and gets of Nebraska. So that's the name and wow factor that would probably be intriguing to him. And then there's the vicinity and recruiting and where Deion spent most of his life, and that's the South. Either in Texas as a high school coach, a great player at Florida State with the Cowboys, right? Obviously he was with the 49ers. And then also Washington, but and was great in Atlanta. I would think Georgia Tech could be a natural fit as well, or Auburn. And who knows if Deion's ready to move on from Jackson State right now. But it was kind of fun while it lasted. And Deion and Mickey tag team in top 10 classes. My, oh my, that could have been fun. And we'll see. We have a little bit of time yet before this impending announcement actually happens with where actually Nebraska goes with their head coach.
And I think the question of the day is this Zach Smith guy. It's his podcast, Minus 2 Sports, which is an interesting, maybe fitting podcast name for some of this guy's history. But he essentially, the question is he doing this in order to build up his podcast, making a story out of nothing so the Husker fans tune in and go, wow, this is awesome news, build up the numbers? Or does he actually have an inside scoop? Does he actually have a source? And Connor, do we have the audio pulled? Are we allowed to play this today?
Sure. There's no naughty words. Correct.
I don't have the audio, but I can get it for you.
Okay, I can just briefly give you the synopsis. So Zach Smith says he got a call from a
guy who knows a guy.
Pretty much. It's a guy who claimed to be a coach within the HBCU ranks, and he said this coach reached out to me and just said, you're not going to believe this, but just got a call last night from Deion Sanders saying that he's about to accept the Nebraska job and he wants me on as a coordinator on his next staff. The pen hasn't been put to paper, but he has verbally accepted an offer and is in the process of putting together a staff before he puts pen to paper. And that's essentially where this story came from, that this guy is a trusted source in the HBCUs that is going to be following Deion to Nebraska, and that's what they made this out of.
Is he a competitor against Deion on the recruiting trail in the HBCU ranks? Is he trying to do a little misdirection so he can land a prized recruit? Is he trying to – is this come from Auburn, right? So there can be some urgency to make a move and – let's get going here. Let's throw in Nebraska will react. And
Nebraska has reacted.
Nebraska has reacted. And, what's the motive other than Deion's super intriguing?
Mm-hmm. But, yeah, again, I come back to your point. What's the motive? Why is this coach calling up Zach Smith? And based on the tone I got, I don't think...
Who willingly calls up Zach Smith?
Well, I don't think Zach Smith pulled this out of his, what. I don't think he pulled it out of nowhere based on his tone and how he presents this. I do think he actually got a call from somebody. I do believe somebody actually told him. Now, the question is, why would they release this to Zach Smith? I don't think they're reaching out to Zach Smith to make him a part of the staff. That doesn't make much sense to me, and maybe I'm wrong there, but that seems like an absolute PR nightmare.
Aside from his off-the-field issues... on field, the guy was really good. I'm not condoning or excusing. I'm saying when it came to coaching and recruiting, Zach Smith was incredible. But you can't hire that guy nor be around that guy.
Or the other question is so, again, back to the motive. Is this coach reaching out saying, you know what, Zach Smith, I like you. I know you're trying to build up this podcast. Let me give you a scoop to get you some inside knowledge. Or is this, as you said, another HBCU coach trying to pull the rug out from underneath Deion Sanders and give himself some leverage? That's where I'm trying to decipher where this is coming from. Or is it 100% legit? Is it just, you know what, I'm friends with Zach Smith. Here's an inside knowledge. I don't even know you have a podcast, man. I don't think you're going to go shout this to the wind. Let's just have a friendly conversation about what I know, what I'm hearing. I know you love college football. And, oh, wait, you have a podcast, and now you're releasing this to everybody. I didn't know that. I don't know what the backstory is here, but all I know is there is some sort of motive to release this to a guy like Zach Smith. And I'm not sure that takes away from the credibility of the story, but it does raise some question marks as to, what the hell does this mean?
It means that Nebraska is ready for movement and an announcement.
Well, and the Deion Sanders name, when you dive into it, there is a lot of excitement around that name if Deion is the guy.
He's a good old-school coach.
Old-school coach. And I said this a few months ago about Urban, and I am not on Team Urban Meyer whatsoever, but my defense for Urban as being, yes, this guy should be at least considered as a Nebraska coach, is the fact that if you're a high school player, if you're a guy who's in the transfer portal, if you're a guy who's happy at a school, and you pick up your phone and you see, hey, it's Urban Meyer calling, you pick up, and it's the same story with Deion Sanders. If you're happy no matter what, if you're in a commitment, if you're, say, Dylan Raiola going off to Ohio State, and you get a call from Deion Sanders saying, hey, bud, I want you at Nebraska, me and Mickey Joseph are going to go balls to the wall to get you to Nebraska, you're going to pick up that call and you're going to listen to what Deion Sanders has to say because it's Deion. It's prime. Everyone knows Deion Sanders. Everyone knows the results he's had down at Jackson State. I was going to say Georgia State. I knew that was wrong. Down at Jackson State, everyone's seen the results, and everyone knows, yet Deion, I respect that guy. He knows what it takes to get to the NFL. He's a wise guy, and man, he really connects with the black youth of America. That's what he's shown. I mean, he went and beat Nick Saban for the #1 recruit in the country last season. That just speaks to what Deion Sanders is and the respect that he draws. That's why you look at this with excitement for Nebraska if Deion is the guy. Now, on the flip side, Big Ten experience, no. Proven program builder, I'd also say no. He's done it at Jackson State, but Jackson State is not Nebraska.
It's not the Big Ten.
Not a proven program builder. And the third factor is, what's Deion's longevity at a place like Nebraska? How much does he love coaching college football? That's another big question. He's had success, and he did it because, he wanted to rise up the ranks of what HBCU was to college football. Now whenever he gets out of that, now he's coaching for a paycheck as opposed to something a little bit bigger than that. What is the motivation for a guy like Deion Sanders to, give full commitment to a place like Nebraska?
Going to ask both of you because you're young. I remember when Deion was drafted. I remember watching him play against Nebraska in the Fiesta Bowls. I remember the incredible ability as a lockdown corner and punt returner extraordinaire. So I know Deion. He was part of my childhood, man. I mean, he was fantastic.
Well, Deion was a part of my childhood as well, but in a slightly different way. It wasn't watching Deion Sanders play.
That's where I'm going. What do you guys think of him as two young 20-year-olds?
It's a guy that the excitement behind Deion Sanders. It's almost like we were talking about Michael Vick on the show yesterday. It's what Michael Vick would be to a guy who is 14, 15-year-old now. You see the highlights of Michael Vick. You see him on Twitter and you go, wow, I wish I could have watched this guy live. This guy looks incredible, looks like the best athlete on the field. That's what I thought of as Deion, but for the most part, I saw him on NFL Network.
Okay, so you know him as an analyst.
I knew him. He had his little segment, 21st in Prime, every single time, where he's one of the best segments on NFL Network on any given day, and it mixed in current highlights with Deion's old highlights, and Deion would give his take, and you just knew that's a guy who's respected, that's a guy who's a Hall of Famer, that's Deion Sanders. It's not that we don't know him for his play, but I think it's slightly different than the lens that you view him through. And Connor, I'll let you jump in here because you're even younger than me.
Yeah, I mean, I think of him still more as a player, mainly. Like, I'm not a huge NFL Network watcher regardless, so I didn't really see him that much in that sense. But, just like the impact of how he played and the kind of the swagger in which he played, I think rubs off on the younger generation because a lot of people want to play like Deion Sanders, so I think that was a little bit of it. So, yeah, just kind of highlights-wise and, oh, yeah, that's Deion Sanders. Like, he's the guy. And back to your point, Elijah, I mean, you're getting a phone call from Deion Sanders, you're going to pick up and listen to that phone call. I mean, even in today's, even in my age group, you're going to pick up that phone call. So I think that's kind of the impact that he's left on people my age is more so how he played and the swagger in which he brought to the football field and how he was so dominant while bringing all those aspects together in between the lines.
And to your point, Connor, I think everyone in our age group has at least seen the highlight of Deion Sanders returning that punt and he high steps it across midfield. Yeah. Everyone's seen that highlight.
50-yard high step.
That speaks to the swagger that he played with, and kind of that's how he connects with that younger generation. Is he almost, in my mind, looking back, was a player ahead of his time in terms of that, in terms of building your own brand on the football field, playing with some swagger, playing with, I don't want to say a chip on your shoulder, but playing in a way that you're the best player on the field. You have confidence in yourself.
He was so boisterous and cocky.
That's the best word. Boisterous is the way to put it.
And just diva. You think of wideouts as divas. I mean, you flip it around. He was such a difference-maker athlete that your best wideout, Jerry Rice, Michael Irvin, Andre Rison, and I know him and Rison would always, shadow box one another off the line of scrimmage. Rison's probably a stretch to throw in with Irvin and Rice, but the point being is he took your best away, and there was nothing you could do about it. And for as loud and brash as he was, dude, he delivered all the time, every time on Sundays. And then you flip it over. Bo Jackson was the first two-sport stud, and what could have been with Bo if he doesn't get hurt against Cincinnati. Well, Deion was in every fall classic playing for Atlanta, or he'd go have a run at a batting title with Cincinnati or San Francisco. I mean, so his baseball career was not as impactful as Bo's, but, man, you knew where he was, where he returned to punt and hit a home run. They did a 30 for 30 on it, for God's sake.
And not many people can do that.
Yeah, the week of Deion. But, no, listen, this is fun to chat about, fun to think about, and a name that has been out there, but you never really took seriously until maybe you're still not taking seriously, but it's there, and it just kind of underscores where you're at. Let's talk for a second here. We got about a minute here. We'll dive in with Gregg Henson in a little bit as well on Michigan, Nebraska. But, you know, you look at Mickey from an experience standpoint, the hesitation for some on Mickey is experience as a head coach. And he'll have 9 games to show what he's done. Nebraska is not winning right now. They're up against it, but they're still playing hard. They still have been competitive. That's a credit to him with this mess. There'd be some that say, you know what, Mickey's, do you move on from Mickey if Deion was an option? Just from an experience standpoint, the level. Mickey's been where Deion's been, but Mickey's been at some Power Fives longer. And that's the whole point with Trev is you got to go find somebody who you either can believe can grow into the job if it's Mickey, or you go get a guy that can build and has experience doing so. And to your thought about Mickey and now Deion, I mean, Deion's not done it at the Big Ten level.
He hasn't done it at the
Power
Big Ten
5
level. But you can look at projection and say that a two-headed monster of Mickey Joseph and Deion Sanders recruiting, I think, can lessen the pitfalls of some of those inexperienced things. If you can go get better talent than anybody.
Can both guys go get offensive line and defensive linemen? We'll continue on with Hail Varsity.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Back with you at Hail Varsity Radio. We're here at the Hail Varsity Club in La Vista, just snuck in between Cabela's and Embassy Suites. We are on the air here in Omaha on ESPN Omaha 590 till 5:30 till volleyball coverage. We welcome in Michigan insider Mr. Gregg Henson back with us. Follow him at Gregg Henson on Twitter. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, Connor Clark, as we get you ready for tomorrow's point spread. Great teams cover. Remember that mantra. Greg, what's the good word, man? Thanks for jumping on. How are you doing? I think you're muted, partner.
I'm old.
There it is.
Now we're good.
There we go.
Gotcha.
Hey, good to see you,
I
man.
unmuted it. I'm not stupid. So let me tell you something. I'm gonna put in a request.
Okay.
To call this Hail to the Victors Radio. Let's do that.
No, can't do it. Can't do
The
it.
top part of the logo.
Can't do it.
I can still remove you from the stream if you go too far down this road.
I worked for him. I love him. We're going to be nice. But no, hey, great season this year for Michigan. But you've covered sports, man, for a number of years in monster markets, and you got to love a good coaching carousel. That's what Nebraska's a part of. Today's wild, crazy rumor was Deion. That's been dispelled 2 days ago. 2 days ago, it was Gary Patterson. We've heard the Aranda. Listen, your immediate reaction to the thought and possibility of a Deion Sanders in Lincoln?
No. Deion Sanders, I love Deion, but I don't think you turn over a program like Nebraska to a guy who's coached for 2 years. That's it's too important of a school. It's too important of a conference to screw around. Look, I was there when they hired Scott Frost. I hate that it didn't work out for him. He should have gone there, won, and died there. And it's just like with Harbaugh at Michigan. When it was tenuous, whether that would work. I think there's going to be a number of other coaching guys that will pop up for you guys once it's time to hire a coach. I like Bronco Mendenhall. I saw him mentioned. I have him here in Virginia. Good dude. Really laid back, though. Like, not a fiery type coach, but I think he'll win. I really think that would be a good fit at Nebraska, unless there's somebody from the Huskers past that can coach football, which I can't think of any off the top of my head.
Mickey's done a really good job with this mess. There's still some management things. There's been some, headbutting with the offensive coordinator and Mickey, how you get out alive. You know how Big Ten football works. You run the football, and then you run the football some more, and there's been some hesitancy, and Nebraska's been knocked down a little bit with the backup quarterback situation where they're at. So, it's your point is kind of the same page I'm on with. You want experience, and the name and the brand is still important to this state and the world of college football, but it's still not the easiest gig to take. You know that.
Well, I think, when you're talking about Nebraska, it's got to be a guy who can handle all the different machinations that go on, not just coach football. You got to come in with a great staff. Bronco Mendenhall or somebody like him would come in, immediately stabilize the program. And I don't know where your thoughts are on Bronco, but I really
talked a lot about him, and I think he's good. I think he's good. Yeah,
I love him. He was here in Virginia. I was sad to see him go, and the program definitely took a step back. But you need a guy who's going to come in and keep all the factions at bay. And Nebraska is very similar to Michigan when Harbaugh came in. They screwed Rich Rod because Rich Rod wasn't a Michigan guy, and he came in and he was just not a good fit. I think he would have won if they would have left him alone. They did the same thing to Brady Hoke. Brady Hoke was a weak head coach who, really couldn't control his own athletic director. And I think that's going to be important for whoever comes into Nebraska because it's a big job. It's a big brand name, and it can win again if it's done correct. What happened with Frost? What's the scoop there? How could he go from being a 12-0 coach to a dummy?
I think the hires around him did not help him. They misevaluated. They didn't develop. They didn't practice the right way. And then I think he just got overwhelmed, and I don't know that you put the work in. That's my short synopsis.
Yeah, okay. Interesting.
I mean, I think that's
too
totally
bad. I had high hopes for him, man.
Gregg Henson's with us here, Hail Varsity Radio, as we talk a little bit of Deion Sanders. But, Greg, let's shift gears here, talk some Michigan, as that is the task at hand for this Husker football team, even though we might want to avoid the game that's coming up tomorrow. Husker fans, I think, pretty scared for this one. Michigan, a 30.5-point favorite. Tell me a little bit about what this Michigan offense is going to be trying to do tomorrow. Obviously, feed the ball to Blake Corum, but that's not necessarily a winning recipe moving forward, especially once you get to the higher level competitions, teams with some solid run defenses. And I'm not putting Nebraska in that echelon, but when you look at tomorrow, do you see Michigan, start trying to get J.J. McCarthy involved with the offense a little bit more? Or is this going to be Blake Corum early and often until it doesn't work?
Well, I think it's going to be it's kind of going to be like what they did at Rutgers. They came out throwing the ball, wanted to try to kind of get some stuff done. The first half will be close. You'll see what that is. Michigan will feel them out, try some things. They're going to feed the ball to Corum, but the growing rumor is that they want to start featuring Edwards a little more too, because that gives them that dual threat. The thing that Michigan offense wants to do is keep you off the field. Everything they do right now, it's like if you're learning to fly an airplane, you go up 10,000 feet and you stall the plane. Everything you do up there is in case your plane stalls on the run when you're taking off or landing. So everything Michigan is doing right now is to prepare themselves to keep the Ohio State offense off the field. So you're going to see them do a variety of things. You're going to see them run the ball heavy with Corum. You're going to see Donovan Edwards run the ball, but he's also going to catch the ball out of the backfield. He started to see that again last week when he caught the great pass down the sideline, and then he had a great touchdown catch. He's a real dual threat guy. Corum won't take the ball, won't catch the ball in the air. He's going to run it. They're going to get a couple of linemen back this week, and you'll see a lot of tight ends. And then they're going to come back out in the second half with adjustments and run away. That's kind of what what it's been all year. And I'm not saying that, to embarrass you guys. I just think that's what it's going to be. I don't know that the personnel can match up and keep you guys in it much past that, unfortunately. Is Thompson even playing tomorrow?
No, he's out, dude. You have two backups and two possibly unhealthy backups.
You're not offending anybody with that
Tom.
take.
I think Gage has been good. Connor, you got something, bud?
Yeah, I was going to say, too, because the Michigan offensive line has been just so dominant the past 2 years, really, at this point. How big of an emphasis has that been for Michigan's success this year? J.J. McCarthy's been a good quarterback, obviously, but how much has that offensive line play helped the offense really open up this year?
Well, it's funny because most programs don't get rolling until they get offensive linemen. When Harbaugh got here, the class before he took the job, there was one tackle, just one. And you take 5-6 linemen every year. So he is just now in a position where he can redshirt some hogs and put 40 pounds on them before they have to play. When he got here, he was playing freshmen and sophomores on that offensive line. He had nobody else. And that's what I think will happen at Nebraska when they start to turn it around. You'll see linemen come in, get redshirted, and then they start road grading when they get older. And I think this is the culmination of what they've put in. They won the Joe Moore Award last year, and this damn line might be better because of the transfer at center. They didn't have to rush a redshirt freshman in this year, and they put Olu in. And next year, Greg Crippen will be a redshirt sophomore and ready to take over. So I think it plays a huge part, and I think it's why I keep saying to myself, I think Harbaugh's finally got this thing going. I don't know that they're at Ohio State's level yet, maybe running the ball. We're going to find out. I know they're not at Georgia's level, but they're in the top 3 to 6 somewhere, 3 to 10 somewhere in there, and it's because of that offensive line. They'll punch you in the mouth. I mean, last week they were very physical with Rutgers, and there were 2 backups in. And then Trevor Keegan, the left guard, left the game late, so we're going to find out if he's playing. But luckily, there's 6 or 7 of them who will play.
Michigan insider Gregg Henson's with us here on Hail Varsity Radio. And Greg, let's flip this around to the defensive side of the ball, and particularly the defensive line. That's where I'm particularly scared for this game tomorrow. They have some freaks on that defensive line. Mozzie Smith is an absolute monster from what I've seen from him, both weight room videos and on the field. And Nebraska's offensive line is really the weakness of their team. Tell me a little bit about what that Michigan defensive line likes to do and how it opens up what Michigan does defensively.
Well, it's fascinating because Mozzie is another kid who sat on the bench for 2.5 years and just lifted weights and got himself in shape. Now he's probably going to be drafted, but he could come back for another 2 years, I believe, if he wanted to. Here's the difference between this year and last year. Last year, you knew Michigan was going to get pressure on the edge. Now you don't know where it's coming from. It can come from the edge. It can come up the middle. And that, I think, makes it more difficult because last year you had to watch Hutchin Ojabo, and the middle didn't get much push. This year, it's coming from everywhere. I mean, Sainris still is a nickelback who's got sacks. You got the linebacker, Michael Barrett. You got, Junior Colson. They're sending pressure from different locations, which will make it tougher on quarterbacks. And they still get it on the edge with Mike Morris. So I think the defensive line is really key to turnaround. And again, you guys, this was a reload year. These players weren't supposed to be this good this year. They're all young. I think the only one who leaves next year are the 2 are Mozzie and Mike Morris, and Morris is going to go early, and so is Mozzie. So, again, it's just they got it humming to the point now where they can plug guys in, much like Ohio State can, much like USC can, Oklahoma, much like Nebraska used to. When someone left, they would just throw guys in, and it would work out. So the back half of the defense is playing really well, too, especially the corners. They're undersized, but, man, when they get burned, they fix it. The adjustments Michigan's defense makes in the second half, I don't know if you've seen some of these stats, but they outscored their opponents the last 4 games like 130-8 or something, or 9. I mean, it's that good. So if it's close at halftime, be happy, because I think the second half could be where the route is on. But I haven't watched a ton of Nebraska. I know they got a lot of pride. They're a good program. I just think it's personnel. Just don't have enough of it right now. And it's tough to recruit out to out there.
Gregg Henson's with us, Michigan insider. There's the theme: build, develop, plug. And Michigan's been able to do that. Harbaugh's had 8 years, and they are poised for another playoff run. Greg, we'll do this sooner rather than later. Thanks again for jumping on, and we'll wrangle you here as we get closer to Big Ten championship. I see it. Our cameras are not picking it up. Make sure they don't flip.
Turn it off.
Make sure they don't flip the schedule. We were supposed to be out in Ann Arbor the 15th to see you this year. Of October, they flipped the schedule. So soon we will be out in Ann Arbor. Brother, be good, and we'll talk soon. Thanks for the time today.
Thanks, guys.
There he is. Mr. Michigan insider Gregg Henson, Hail Varsity. Andrew Rodgers up next.
He's in his 30s, but sounds like he was born with a stogie in one hand and a brew in the other.
Now, say my name.
It's Schmidt on Hail Varsity Radio.
I got the body of a taut preteen Swedish boy.
Back with you, it's Hail Varsity Radio here at the Hail Varsity Club. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, Connor Clark, Andrew Rodgers in from Hurrdat Sports. And what a day. I mean,
what a day.
The smoke is just swifting in the atmosphere with Rumor Mill, man. And
thank goodness, right?
We've talked ourselves on the ledge about Coach Prime and then off the ledge with Coach Prime. Bill Doleman coming up, and then the infamous Clauseborne next hour with the forecast. But, hey, it's never dull in Nebraska.
No. And, it's great because it gives a lot of people a positive outlook into the weekend, right? You have a lot of names surfacing.
Aside from the game.
Correct. It's the elephant in the room, right? What you're trying to avoid talking about and the inevitable coming this weekend. Michigan, one of the most complete teams in the Big Ten, and in my opinion, the most complete team. I see them taking down Ohio State in a few weeks, but yeah, it's a tall task for Nebraska this weekend.
Well, it's not to say it's impossible, though. You're calling it the inevitable.
To cover or to win?
That's the thing. Your money or mine.
You're right.
We'll just take Connor's money.
Any given week in the Big Ten. Northwestern just about took down Ohio State.
You know what?
Week.
And I'm with you here, Elijah.
Act of God weather.
I'm really, though, with Elijah because every season there's that one game that Nebraska's not supposed to compete in. And here they are,
losing
one
by
score
one
away. Yeah, exactly.
I hate to be the bearer of bad news. I don't think that's going to happen this weekend.
I don't think so either.
I don't think so. We'll get to the forecast eventually.
Yeah, let's be straight. The scare or disinterest for Michigan very apparent against Rutgers last weekend. 17-14 and a half. At one point, Rutgers led that thing 14-10.
Good defense.
Schiano absolutely knows how to keep it close with Harbaugh. They did the last 2 years, and then the second half happened. Gregg Henson, our Michigan insider, wanted us to kiss his yellow M on his zip up. He's like, kiss it, and I just no, we're not doing that. But he's really plugged into the program. But it's been a story of, dare I say, patience with Harbaugh, and they've let them recruit at a high level, and more importantly, develop at a high level. It's what Nebraska's been missing the last 7 years.
Well, and they've also almost made a culture shift within the past 2 years, too, where it's, you know what, we're going to be a non-sexy Big Ten football team. They've moved away from some of that sexiness in recent years.
There's no topless wrestling in the living room on signing day.
Yeah. You know what, they're just going to be a hard-nosed Big Ten football team, and they're going to let the results come, and by leaning into that, it's really turned into the results we've seen the past couple of years where they're a college football playoff contender year in, year out.
2 years in a row. Andrew Rodgers with us. Andrew, give us, folks know and see you on social media and your hits with Hurrdat. But just if folks are just catching you for the first time on Hail Varsity Radio since August, kind of give folks a heads up what you've been up to and some of the content you've been rocking.
How much time do you guys have?
We have
a little bit.
6 minutes, and then the gun goes off.
Right, exactly. A lot. Yeah, there's been a huge push into the podcast and radio entity for Hurrdat Sports. Coming soon, Coffee and Cream on Hail Varsity Radio. We keep saying that, but we promise it's actually coming soon. And
for folks that are wondering, okay, that's how I like it in the morning. You'll really like it in the morning a little more.
Well, especially because Damon Benning's going to be paired with me, and I know this town goes nuts for DB. He was even in Springfield yesterday, and there was a platoon of people that went to this little small barn, and it was packed to the brim, and DB was talking. I don't remember what he was talking about, but he could talk about selling sweaters at the local store, and people would show up and listen to Damon Benning.
Well, I love the setup you guys have, too, where it starts out with, my morning as well, coffee and cream, followed up with the morning dump, and then Benning bites some cereal.
You never know. Those could alternate, though. The morning dump could be first. You really never know. Benning bites, though, in technicality terms, that comes first. Then it's coffee and cream. Then morning dump. And then it's the sports six-pack in the evening. Of course, not when you're driving. When you're chilling on your back patio in 30-degree weather.
The old liver needs a six-pack every night.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe in the morning, too. Yeah. Who knows?
Well, it depends what the score in the Husker game is, what time you start that drinking.
Right. And you can find those podcasts wherever you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, and that's where we'll live until coffee and cream comes to fruition.
Launches. What are you feeling tomorrow? We were batting this around. What's a win for Nebraska tomorrow? And I'm not talking the mother of all upsets. What's a win aesthetically, perception-wise, at least so Sunday morning comes around, recruiting world, college football world can look and say, hey, great effort.
I think it's focusing on what didn't go right against Minnesota. There was that point to where people sat at home and said, did Mickey and the coaching staff make enough adjustments quick enough in order to be a big threat in that football game? And it didn't seem like they had a great turnaround rate there. Now it's a lot, like I said, it's a daunting task to go up against this Michigan team. You got to stick with what you know. You got to stick with what the Big Ten knows. Commit to the run game in this especially. I know Mickey was pushing that in practice this week, but commit to a process. Don't quickly abandon it if it's not going right away. It probably won't, but if you stick with that and you eat the clock, time is your best friend in this game. We talk about the turnover margin all the time too. They're never on the positive end of that. If you can find a way to maybe
get even at least.
Yeah, get even, and then the magic number is 4 on the ground, right? Just try to stress for 4 yards a carry, and when that's not working, craft up a unique game plan to attack the passing game. No Casey Thompson, as everybody knows, so I'd be interested to know if it will be a Purdy Smothers thing this week, or if it will lean one direction or the other.
50-50 in reps this week during
But that's what they said too last week, and we didn't see that.
No, what they got to do is bottle up that first drive, fellas, against Minnesota and live there. Can you live there with some short passing, with some quarterback run, and be effective enough? Purdy was that little lateral passing game. Smothers, when they let him, had some nice tosses downfield. You have some athletes to get involved if you're Nebraska.
I think also, too, giving your defense breathers in this game is of great importance. We saw last week that it was 3 and out after 3 and out, and they're on the field in 1:20 in game time. And I know that's not actually you're on the field back in a minute, but sometimes you're pretty close to that number. And against a team that runs the ball as much as Michigan and that can be even more physical up at the line than you probably are, you can't go 3 and out offensively and expect your defense to put up a fight.
Andrew, before we get you out, a bit of a national look here with Blake Corum, in the Heisman race. What do you think of Blake? What is Nebraska going to be seeing tomorrow with this guy? Because he impressed us last year whenever he came to Lincoln, had that long touchdown run, but he wasn't the number one guy just yet. This year, as the number one guy, he's really come into his own.
Yeah, he really looks like what Derrick Henry and Mark Ingram looked like when they won the Heisman. 6 straight games of 100-yard rushing. It's hard for a running back to win the Heisman Trophy, as we all know. Jonathan Taylor, I say it to this day, I can't believe he wasn't even a Final 3 when Joe Burrow ended up winning, but you can't compete with 5,600 yards and 60 touchdowns. I mean, that's just unheard of. But expect a big game from Corum. He's going to run for 100 yards or more.
I think if there's any positive about tomorrow, it's that Blake Corum's Heisman moment will not come tomorrow. No matter what he does, that's going to come in 2 weeks against Ohio State.
Same thing with C.J. Stroud.
Exactly.
You hope.
Yeah. I just don't want to see a 200-yard performance by the tailback in Michigan.
You're going on consecutive showdowns against the who's who. Hang out, Andrew. We'll do another segment here, partner, as we wind down this first hour. Hail Varsity. We're here at the Hail Varsity Club in La Vista. Come by, say hi. We wind down this first hour next. We're presented by Currency.
And now,
back to Hail Varsity Radio.
One final time, Hail Varsity here at the Hail Varsity Club. We're here noon to 2 tomorrow. Weekend edition, special time leading up to kickoff. Nebraska and Michigan. Andrew Rodgers from Hurrdat Sports to my left. Elijah Herbel to the right. Connor Clark is chained to the studio. Back in Lincoln, he looks thrilled. Gives us the thumbs up. At least it was the correct finger on the StreamYard. The Facebook and ESPN Lincoln video feed with StreamYard going. And then the Hail Varsity Radio Twitter handle. Also live streaming the show. You want tickets to Dave Matthews tomorrow night? I'm not giving you mine. You want tickets to Nebraska football for Wisconsin, Husker volleyball. Your friends at Red Zone Tickets make it happen, selling fun since 2001. NFL action. Do you like the Chiefs? Do you like Elijah's Denver Broncos? Good luck going to that this year. Theater, CWS, concerts, and more with Red Zone Tickets. They are local. They're great folks here in Omaha, have been for 20-plus years. A-plus Better Business Bureau rating. And that means they guarantee your order 100%. So log on today and cross that item off the bucket list. Create the memories that do last a lifetime. RedZoneTickets.com. RedZoneTickets.com. Do you have a prediction? Have you already laid that out there with the 30.5? It's dropped a whole half point.
It has.
For Nebraska-Michigan.
I would,
value. Give me some value.
Oh, man.
First half live bet.
No. I look at a spread this large and think.
Largest ever. I mean, it tops Oklahoma 04.
4 touchdowns, like 4.
Plus,
you really
you're
think
closer to
you really think that they're going to beat you by 4 touchdowns, and maybe they do. At Michigan, though, as you guys had already alluded to, they've had more than just one close game this year against a team that they probably should have blew out.
You know how it happened, though, throwing the ball.
Well, but the thing with the Michigan team is they're not an explosive offense. Like, it comes down to their defense if they want to cover a 30-point spread. I'm not saying Michigan can't go score 30, but if Nebraska goes and puts up 17 points, 20 points on them, that's an almost impossible line for how their
I'm not seeing 50
operates.
Points, the Wolverines. No.
They're a slow, steady team that's going to beat you with 5-6-yard runs down the field, turns into a touchdown, long drives, they kill the clock. They're just not built to go put up, as you said, 50-plus points. So
big plays.
It comes down to more Nebraska's offense on if they can go cover that spread.
Sure, running the football, though, I mean, as long as Nebraska can have some success running the football, you're going to eat the clock, and there's no way you're going to reach that total. There's just no shot.
You just got to pray that Nebraska, by week 3 now, will stick to running the football.
Yeah, just don't ask me to put money down on that, because I'm avoiding.
We will not. Your money, my money, Mama's money. Connor, you had a comment here?
My one rebuttal to that is that how do we know that Michigan won't be on the field every 2 seconds like we saw a week ago?
Style points, too. You have playoff impressions to make.
6 straight punts a week ago. I don't want people to forget.
Is that good?
No. And here's the question. What does Michigan's backup quarterback, running game, O-line, defense do? Because there's a shot they'll be in the game.
Sure.
Do they rise up? Do they hold fort? Or
you're hoping for some garbage time football?
But with what I know about I know about Harbaugh, especially in the playoff races, it's less making a big line change in order to bring in your backups. It's more, you know what, we're going to sit down a guy like Blake Corum. We're going to sit down a guy like Mozzie Smith. We're going to bring in the backups there, but it's going to be 6 or 7 starters on the field as opposed to all 11.
I'll tell you what, too. You won't see, unless Michigan is up 35 points at halftime, you won't see the 30 cover. Because, as you just stated there, if they're up 3 or 4 touchdowns, they'll just kind of play easy football at this point. They're not going to try too hard. They're not going to try to injure anybody. They're going to keep the legs moving, but they want to hold on to those bodies for deeper in the season.
Mm-hmm. Andrew Rodgers, thanks, brother.
Hey,
Appreciate
for sure. Thank you guys so much.
Elijah Herbel, Connor Clark, Chris Schmidt, Hour 2, Bill Doleman here. Hail Varsity Club here in La Vista. Come by, say hi with Hail Varsity, presented by Currency.
Welcome to Hail Varsity Radio, the voice of Husker Nation. Insight, opinion, expertise, with the biggest and best names talking Nebraska across the state. Join the show on Twitter at Hail Varsity and at Schmidt_radio. Call in at 402-466-ESPN or 1-800-825-5865. Here's Chris Schmidt.
Back with you. It's Hour 2. It's Hail Varsity, presented by Currency for all your equipment financing needs. On the road today here at the Hail Varsity Club in La Vista, Bill Doleman, the Pride of Fairbury, NBC Sports Big Ten volleyball man on assignment. And, we talked to Dr. Rob Zadiska earlier. It looked like he was in a timeout. Bill Doleman, too, has been put in a timeout in his vehicle. Billy D., how we doing?
Well, I'm driving right now on I-29 down to Kansas City. That's why I'm in my truck, scaring the hell out of everybody on the interstate. No, I'm not. I am parked outside the studio, so nobody needs to worry.
That's pretty good. Dolan's just sitting there down the interstate. What's up? Just waving along. That's not frightening or anything. We'll get to Michigan, Nebraska, but Bill Doleman, Coach Deion Sanders. You probably covered Deion in one of those Fiesta Bowls, didn't you?
Yeah, you know what? I might have. That's right. That's right. We ran into those guys quite a bit back in the mid to late 80s. You know, it seemed like Nebraska, Florida State were playing all the time, and then we started playing Miami all the time. Yeah.
So, a thought here on Deion. We talked about it a little earlier in the show. Monster Brand has done well at Jackson State, the Fighting Walter Paytons. I mean, he's he's an old school coach. He's landed a 5-star. I know that is high on your radar with recruiting rankings. But, Deion is a guy that so far so good. I don't know how that sits with you as far as, all right, is this a sweet whopper? Or can you do the math on this thing if you're Trev?
I just find this whole process now, as it has evolved over the past probably 2 or 3 weeks, the rumor mill just is cranking out as we near the end of it. Whether or not there is smoke to this fire or fire to this smoke, who knows at this point. 2 weeks ago, everybody was dead set that Lane Kiffin had Bob Davie hook up his cable, right? And we know that's not true because everybody streams nowadays. So is it possible? I suppose at this point, I'm willing to buy just about any story that's out there and follow it to see where it goes, and then patiently wait until we all get to open our presents on the 25th of November or the 26th, as the case might be. Certainly that would be as splashy a hire as any institution could possibly make if you were able to land Deion Sanders. And why wouldn't it? It completely makes sense, doesn't it? Deion Sanders to Lincoln, Nebraska. Actually, I think it probably makes more sense than Lane Kiffin, because I think that Deion has probably played or coached in more games in the North than Lane Kiffin. I don't know. It's a fun story for the day. Everybody's blowing up that it's this Zach Smith. Is that the same guy that was the assistant coach at Ohio State? That was
one and the same.
Past tense. Staff? Yes.
Okay, so I did look and see that website. I think you always have to kind of consider, the logistical sources, not just the source. That's a site that I believe has 14,000 subscribers. Okay, not 143,000 subscribers, not 1.4 million subscribers, 14,000. So are we clickbaiting on YouTube? Maybe, smart, and maybe he'll get double his subscribers, and then it'll turn out to be true, and he'll still keep another 5 of them. So you've climbed and lost. They're putting a lot on the line coming out as definitive as they were, right? I mean, they made it sound like this is a done deal, except for it's 98.5% a done deal, right? Let's leave a little wiggle room just in case it doesn't happen.
Yeah, Bill, that's where I was going to go next. You kind of hit on it here over the past 90 seconds or so, the source. And Zach Smith, I'm sure he does have connections in the coaching world, but as you said, this could also be a play to try to get his podcast some more listeners, some more subscribers. Everyone knows Nebraska fans are going crazy for the coaching search news right now, so let's go talk Nebraska coaching search, make a story, and see how many listeners we can get. That's a possibility, but I also go, yeah, he's a guy who does have connections, especially around, Ohio State and people formerly connected to Ohio State, and I'm not going to go any further into that. But where I wanted to go, just an overarching theme, is Trev has kept his cards pretty close to his chest from a Nebraska point of view. Do you think it is more likely that if we do get rumors out there that turn out to be true, that they're going to be coming from outside Nebraska, like a guy like Zach Smith?
Well, I think it goes back to the very start of this whole process that, who was the very first, once Trev fired Scott, one of the more prominent writers for The Athletic or ESPN, immediately threw 12 to 13 names out there. That's a lot of splats on the wall that in case one of them, ends up 3 months later or 2 months later hitting, you go, yeah, I was right. I knew it. But you were wrong on 12 of them. And
just takes one, Bill.
It just takes one, and people say, you were on it right away. So I at this point, I think we just need to back away from the table, let Trev be the lone guy in the poker game, and then let him come up and reveal his cards when all is said and done. Because I really think that we're just at that stage where people are just grasping at what is it going to be, because we know the answer is going to be coming fairly soon. And again, 2 weeks ago, it was Lane, right? At the beginning of all this, it was Matt Campbell and Lance Leipold. No doubt about it. And then Dave Aranda. And it could be any one of those guys. Gary Patterson was pretty hot for about 12 hours a couple of days ago, and all of that made sense. And people down in Texas are saying, yeah, I think there's something to that. It just takes one for somebody to be right and get a little credibility to whatever news outlet that they're trying to push. But Zach Smith has certainly tapped into what I've said many times ESPN does in the offseason. What can we do to get some clicks in college football? Let's run a poll and put Nebraska in it and watch Nebraska fans click on it and up the numbers, and we're good until they roll the balls out in August. That's what this really seems to me. Okay, and another thing, too, in listening to that guy, Zach Smith, with his deal today, he said that Deion reached out to a coordinator in the HBCU. Okay, pick out all the schools in HBCU and just go down the list of the 12 or 24 coordinators there are. Okay, is one of those guys going to be the guy? Then start drawing. If you really want to dig into this, take Deion Sanders and do your Kevin Bacon. 6 degrees, 2 degrees of separation to all the coordinators in HBCU as to who it might be. Well, if you want to play the game, let's start digging.
Do you want the theory? There's 2 names that I look at. One of them just left a coordinator position, took a head coaching job in HBCU. That's Hugh Jackson, who's with the Browns whenever Smith was at Ohio State. And the other one's Eddie George, former Ohio State Buckeye, now the head coach at Tennessee State. Those are the 2 names I look at that I go, that kind of makes sense. There's the degrees of separation there.
How cool would it be for Eddie to walk in with Tommy's Heisman?
I was just going to say, somebody's going to stop Eddie George at the Nebraska border, and it is going to be Tommy Frazier. He's not going to stop him. He's just going to take that thing and say, okay, go ahead.
It's mine.
Yeah. That was one of the most fraudulent Heisman Trophy awards ever given out, no doubt about it.
Bill Doleman's with us.
Right. You're playing the game well, though. I mean, if people want to throw it out there, okay, then take it the next step. What are the connections to Deion? Who might it be? Who wouldn't make sense? And you're right. Maybe it is Hugh Jackson, but why would he go to Nebraska to be a coordinator when he's a head coach at one of the most prestigious HBCUs or well-known in the country? I don't know, but that's how you play the game to start to see where these rumors could go. And I'd start making connections to Deion to see if it makes sense.
Bill Doleman's with us on Hail Varsity Radio. Bill, I want to shift gears to this weekend in Michigan, one of the biggest spreads, if not the biggest spread in Nebraska history, underdog-wise. I know we talked earlier this year about how Nebraska likes to keep things close, and they keep you interested throughout the season no matter what the circumstances are. It feels like this weekend may be a little bit different. Your thoughts on that spread and how big it is and what type of chance Nebraska has to maybe make it respectable?
Well, I'm a little surprised Michigan is that big of an underdog at home against Nebraska. I thought that they might be a little closer, but, Vegas knows. So, but, I think Mickey comes out and they run the wishbone, and I think it throws them completely off. And, Nebraska is able to cover the spread, right?
They're going to win 42-21.
Huh?
Are they going to win 42-21?
Just an outright butt kicking. Okay.
Well, I think Nebraska has a chance to cover. Let's just say that.
So you're telling me Whipple all along has been this masterful wishbone guy. He's just been waiting for the right day.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you just can't throw those cards on the table too soon. So they have been pointing to this. I think you will see, Yant in the fullback spot. And Gabe Ervin's healthy now. They've been pointing about the turf toe's okay. I think this is when we unveil the wishbone. Absolutely. We could see what Mickey would have done had he been an Oklahoma Sooner wishbone quarterback.
Well, the thought bubble.
Why not?
Just goes off right there. Mickey and the wishbone in Ann Arbor. Why not? Bill Doleman with us as he's getting ready for Big Ten volleyball tonight. Hail Varsity Radio Roadshow Friday. We're here at the Hail Varsity Club. And, Bill, speak on this interesting dynamic. It's been a topic this week with Mickey and Whipple. It just doesn't seem eye to eye right now. And this is the third game now where you're going to need to run the ball. And we'll see if the crotchety OC complies.
Yeah, I remember that quote that Whipple had a few weeks ago that maybe he's better when he's not very nice. Shall we just paraphrase, right? We all know what he said, and that he's better when he's,
that.
But maybe that's not a really good way to operate when you're the offensive coordinator to a guy trying to get, the head coaching job, and maybe you just want to play nice to run out the season and do it on a positive note and just try to have some harmony. I think the last couple of weeks, the post-game press conferences have been a little uncomfortable. Mickey did something about it after the Oklahoma game when he made the change at defensive coordinator, and at this stage, you can't make that change in the OC position. Not that I'm saying he wants to, but it does not seem harmonious in listening to Mickey after the games against, I've already forgotten who Nebraska's played. So, this just seems like a foregone conclusion to the relationship that I'm guessing there won't be any signing of yearbooks once the year is done. No, best friends forever, stay in touch.
Have a cool summer.
That kind of thing. I just don't get that sense, and that's kind of unfortunate. This should have been much more of a all for one type thing, given all that they've been through since the Georgia Southern game, and you just don't get that sense. You just get it's coming to an end. They're gonna separate in 3 weeks, and everybody's anxious for the news as to what's going to happen with Mickey and everybody else, and we're still a couple of weeks away from that.
Bill Doleman's with us here on Hail Varsity Radio. And, Bill, it's a simple question, but it's a tough answer. What does a successful result for Nebraska look like against Michigan on Saturday?
Well, I think it's going to be just like it would have been back in 1997. If the two teams played, Nebraska would have won that game handily, and I think, that we've been waiting for this moment to prove it. Maybe we haven't done it in the last couple of meetings, but, doggone it, why not now? Why not go shock everybody at the big house and pull off the big upset, prove once and for all, 25 years later, that Nebraska was definitively the national championship team, as we all know. And that's why I think Nebraska, in honor of the 25th anniversary, will win it by 25.
To win by 25,
I put a lot of thought into that.
To win by 25, Nebraska needs to do what, though? Offensively, defensively,
get in a fight in the tunnel and have their best guys suspended.
It's one way.
Score 25 more points.
I love the optimism.
Thanks, Bill.
I love it. Bill, last thought.
I'm never going against my Big Red, especially when it comes to Michigan and all that we had to live through back in '97. So there's going to come a day when we are going to prove it once and for all definitively, and we can just move on from this one and then the next one, and we get to Black Friday, and then we all get to open our presents on the 26th.
About a minute here on the topic of Trev to end it. Do you think he's just sitting back, feet on the table, giggling at this wild speculation?
No. I think that was being done about 20 years ago during the 4-year case of the flu. I think before things got out of hand and blew up, I think that guy was probably doing that just a little bit, enjoying watching Nebraska fans twist and reading what was in the media. I don't get that sense at all with Trev. And, and I kind of wonder, has he had his guy all along? He said this is how it's going to play out. We all believe at this point that USC had Lincoln Riley probably wrapped up shortly after they made the move on Helton, and that they just waited for the season to play out. And after Oklahoma was done, 4 hours later, boom, Lincoln Riley's their head coach. That did not materialize, in the last couple of weeks or couple of hours before they made the announcement. You just can't do it in a job like that with the amount of money we're talking about. And is it possible that when Trev made his move in September, and dare I say, started making the move a year ago, he knew he was going to have to do something like this, that maybe he has had his guy, and all the speculation is going on. Trev's just been holding a steady hand, knowing what he had planned and knowing what he needed to do. And maybe it's fallen into place the way he wanted it. And he's just been showing a lot of discipline and leadership until the job is finally finished and the name is announced.
Bill Doleman. Bill, have a great call tonight. Thanks for a few minutes today.
All right, the whole country will be watching Maryland and Minnesota volleyball from Minneapolis. And with that, go Big Red.
Back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Back into it, Hail Varsity Radio Roadshow Friday here at the Hail Varsity Club in La Vista. He is In Detroit, on his way to Ann Arbor, Brady Oltmans, staff writer with HailVarsity.com and magazine. Detroit, have you had the pleasure, good sir?
I have, actually. I've been to Detroit once, but I haven't been outside of Detroit. So I'm a little excited to get to the big house.
The big house, of course, 100,000+, has been called Country Club from time to time, but they got a real deal, man. They got a real program, a real head coach, and some fascinating lines of scrimmage. Brady, let's get into the search and / evaluation, because that's a little more interesting than Saturday at 2:30. What's your feedback / reaction been to Trev and how this thing's proceeded here as we get closer to the finish line?
Well, I've got to give Trev Alberts a lot of credit in how he's handled this. A lot of different schools will have different approaches, and he said in his press conference on September 11th that they were going to be real quiet about it. There were going to be names floated out there, but don't trust it until an announcement's made. And they've done great. I mean, they've done enough where candidates from the outside that are coaching right now feel comfortable interviewing for the job and doing everything they can while not being seen as an enemy of the state wherever they're at. And he's done right by Mickey Joseph. I think he's given Mickey a fair shake at it and trying to get the head coaching job. And, whether they decide to go that route or not, I think there's no indication through the administration or anything that would be a black cloud or a smudge mark on Mickey's resume or reputation. So and while obviously it's frustrating for people like me that are trying to make phone calls and emails and trying to figure this thing out as it's unfolding, that nobody's really talking about it and we don't really have anything, but it's a testament to Trev Alberts and how the administration's kind of handled this. I think that this is what's best for Nebraska and the program and how to conduct this search.
Brady Oltmans with us from Hail Varsity. At Brady Oltmans on Twitter. Give him a follow. Read him, of course, with Hail Varsity. Let's flip it around. And the talk this week, the drama has been the interim head man and the offensive coordinator. And, whip. You hear all sorts of things, but can you follow orders tomorrow and give your team the best chance to win with the best quarterback behind center?
Yeah, it's been really interesting because there was that little, I don't know if you want to call it a dust up, but after Ireland, when Scott Frost said, I think our offense has to get a little bit more creative, that kind of, I think, set everybody's ears, ringing after that one. And then now you kind of see how they interact on the sidelines. There's just weird instances. I know Mickey Joseph's kind of leaned on Mark Whipple for a couple of decisions as head coach because Mark Whipple has head coaching experiences. It's good to have kind of a steady rock or someone with that experience beside you on the sidelines. But Mark Whipple has also done this long enough where he's got his style, he's got his system, and he goes about it his way. And I think Mickey Joseph comes into it obviously with also a ton of experience and a variety of outlooks. But when he says we need to run the ball, slow the game down, keep it on the ground, that's not Mark Whipple's style. So it's been a fun kind of back and forth to see how that power dynamic works, but also just the way that they talked about Casey Thompson and his availability. Obviously, Mickey and Casey go back and they have a long history. And Mickey wants to look out for him and do right by him. And Mark Whipple also has said that he'll never push a guy, through injury. But it always seemed like Whipple was a little bit more optimistic that they'd get Casey against Michigan. And Mickey just didn't have that optimism. And then ultimately Thursday, Mickey made the announcement that Casey's just not up for it. And they're going to have to go with Chuba and Logan again for Michigan.
Well, let's dive into Chuba and Logan. And you just can, if you have to lean on Pretty, can he find some sort of comfort, some sort of rhythm? I mean, he's so erratic back there. And with Logan, here's what I think about Logan. I think he's tough as nails. I think he's a gamer. I think he's a good ball player. Logan smothers runs on 3rd and 5 last weekend if he's not dinged up. I think he's been nursing something. I don't know that for sure, right? I don't have an x-ray in front of me, but just from a mentality standpoint, he's the last guy that's going to bail on contact and running with the football. So, but he's, when you take the leash off him, let him just go get in rhythm, do or die. Let's not, throw caution to the wind. You got to put some points up and put some a drill together. He performed pretty well. He just didn't get some help around him.
Yeah, it's really interesting because I wonder how much it impacts. In Whipple's system, he doesn't really. I mean, they get guys out in space and they want to allow athletes to make plays if the opportunities present themselves, but it's clearly not meant for a scrambling quarterback. It's not meant for a guy to go around there. Of course, Casey Thompson is one of the most reluctant scramblers you'll ever see. At least this season he has been. But I also wonder if part of it is how much weight does Mickey Joseph's word carry this week in the quarterback decisions? They said that they would evaluate through practice, but also take in game consideration. Obviously, Logan performed better than Chuba against Minnesota, but they want to see Logan practice better and push himself a little bit better in practice. But Mickey's also a quarterback. He knows that how harmful it can be for a kid's confidence if you just pull him, at the first signs of distress, especially when the atmosphere on Saturday is probably going to be the biggest that Chuba or Logan has faced in their college careers to this point. I mean, number 3 team in the country, 100,000 people screaming behind you. So you can't really bail on a kid. You got to give him a chance and put your arm around him and reassure him. But I think it's definitely going to be a little bit more of a neck and neck thing rather than Purdy being the go-to guy simply because he is closer to Casey Thompson than Logan's mother.
Let's talk about what impresses you most. And Brady Oltmans with us here on Hail Varsity, Nebraska-Michigan. Here at the Hail Varsity Club, Roadshow Friday. We're here again noon to 2 on Saturday. I had a kickoff with Nebraska-Michigan, so a watch party. What wows you about this Michigan team compared to some other Michigan teams you've seen?
Well, it starts at running back. I mean, Blake Corum is an exceptional back. Jim Harbaugh said that he's the best he's ever coached in college, and maybe even, touching on pros, the only one that he could think of comparable was Frank Gore. Husker fans might be familiar with him. But it's also their depth. They're just incredibly deep. They're deep and they're veteran. Their offensive line is stout, and they've had the same blocking combinations for, I think, 7 of the first 9 games of the season, if I remember correctly. And then their defense hasn't really been banged up. They've had the same front 4, the 2 tackles and edge rushers. They've had the same front 4 for the vast majority of the season. They get to guys, but also their 2s and 3s, there's not a big drop-off. I mean, credit to Jim Harbaugh and how he stuck with it, because I think none of us were really sure Michigan football would be in this position 2-3 years ago. But they've corrected the ship and got it turned around. They're just wildly impressive. Now, having said that, their vertical passing game leaves a little bit to be desired, but they don't ask J.J. McCarthy to do a lot, and he doesn't turn the ball over and make them pay for it. So they're just a real stout team.
Brady, this is novel, and it's happened at Bama, it's happened at Georgia, Clemson, but they have guys that are really talented that have stayed in the program. You go back to a couple of years in the renegotiation of Jimbo's contract, he just needed some more time, right? I mean, Harbaugh early on, you had the quarterback merry-go-round. You had people leaving Michigan, and he recruited high-level quarterbacks, but no one stuck. Well, he went back. He went more and shifted. He's getting high-level guys, but more of a fit, right? So you've got guys that have stayed in the program. And to your point, the lines of scrimmage have developed. They've gotten good. Guys have waited their turn, and then they've been big time. That's just really what it's all about to me with Michigan. They're always going to have good players, but they have coaching to match and that development combination with high-level talent. Is that fair to say what's making Michigan special and in this conversation is second year now?
Yeah, I think absolutely. And that's one of the things that a team like Nebraska or a Big Ten team should aspire to. You can get the recruits in, and you should. Obviously, it saves you a whole lot of time to get a 4-star or even a 5-star kid rather than rely on 2 and 3 stars. But you've got to develop them. You got to keep them in your system. You got to make sure that it's second nature to them on the field to know what to do. That retention is important. That development is so important. And that's that's now the pillar that Nebraska wants to aspire to. So that's Michigan, Ohio State. That's the gold standard in the Big Ten, and rightfully so. And it doesn't look like it's going to go anywhere.
Brady Oltmans with us, staff writer, HailVarsity.com and magazine, on site in Michigan to cover Nebraska-Michigan tomorrow. And before we say goodbye, have you circled the Friday night plans? Where are you going to grub? Is there a hot spot or two? I've been through Ann Arbor on the way to South Bend, but that was many moons ago with Cranack, and that's kind of a top secret vault roadie.
No, nothing pinned down right now. I think I might, while I'm waiting in the airport or in transit, I might hear something or get some recommendations and find someplace to go. But haven't locked anything down yet.
You know, the Big Ten Network food show.
Yeah.
It seems like they always find their way to Ann Arbor. I know they've been to Lincoln a few times as well, but nothing really sticks out. I think there might be like a barbecue joint in Ann Arbor. Maybe not. Maybe a diner or something, but, should be all right. I've been to Detroit a couple of times and Old Tiger Stadium many, many moons ago. But Ann Arbor would be fun. Producer Elijah was thinking about going, and then the line persuaded him to stay home with me.
Well, and the weather doesn't look particularly pleasing this weekend either for it, but that's why you play the game. It's football weather for a reason. Are you
a stocking hat guy or hooded sweatshirt guy? Are you going to do a pregame video again with the words "Let's Ride"?
No guarantees on the "Let's Ride," but I'm probably going to be rocking a beanie or something. But I am a big, because I've switched from hooded sweater to crew neck sweater. That's been the big shift for me professionally.
There we go. And Vogues is like, absolutely. He's nodding in approval. Love it. Brady Oltmans, HailVarsity.com and magazine. On site, read his reaction with Nebraska-Michigan. Brady, take care. Thanks for a few minutes.
Yeah, no problem. Anytime.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Thanks for hanging out. Hail Varsity Radio. We're presented by Currency. For all your equipment financing needs, go Currency. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, Connor Clark back at our ESPN Lincoln studios. Don't forget, Hail Varsity Club tomorrow in La Vista, noon to 2. We're here ahead of Nebraska and Michigan. Cranack, myself, Connor, and Elijah will be riding shotgun here on site. We'll talk to Sharpie and, of course, get thoughts from Mr. Brandon Vogel. Reminder to get buckled up. 1 of every 3 fatal crashes in Nebraska involves an alcohol-impaired driver. Why take chances? If you drink, don't drive. A message from the Nebraska Department of Highway Safety Office. Without further ado, let's get to the Friday forecast. The imaginary and red-wearing Clauseborne joins us. Claus, how's your week?
Well, it's been pretty good, but I'm on my way right now to the Missouri River because I heard Dave Matthews was in town, and I need to check the excrement levels, so let's see how quickly we can do this.
Claus, are you going to the show? Because I'll see you there tomorrow night.
I will not be, as I do not need a contact high at this point.
Connor, have you heard that Dave Matthews Band story? That's from your neck of the woods. That's a Chicago story. Have you heard that one?
I don't think so.
Where the Dave Matthews Band bus
emptied the porta potty
right into the Chicago River.
Well, That's essentially what the Chicago River is anyway. So
speaking of music, I am hearing nothing but NFL Films music, and I can hear John Facenda's voice in my head, but I can barely hear Christopher and Elijah.
Thank you, Claus, for that. So, long and short, this will be my 15th Dave Matthews show since 2000, and going with the pharmacist Jeff. Can't wait to see the show. First, though, football to talk. Let's dive in. Purdue at Illinois, -6.5. Let's start it off. Elijah, what do you say?
Well, Purdue and Illinois, it's a battle between two not-likes. Illinois likes to battle. They like to, hand the ball off to Chase Brown, really pound the rock, whereas Purdue is going to air the ball out. I actually kind of like Purdue in this spot against Illinois. I know Illinois' offense is great.
Huh?
After Iowa, something about Purdue tells me they're not going to string together back-to-back good or bad performances like that. I think Jeff Brom's a good coach. I don't like them to win, but I do like them to take Illinois down to the wire. Give me Illinois 28 and Purdue 27.
I'm around that neighborhood with you. I think Illinois solidifies the West, but it's going to be tight, 28-24, but covered by the Boilers. What do you say, Connor?
I like how important this game is for the West Division. I agree it will be close. I think Purdue covers. I don't think they win. I'm going to go Illinois 27, Purdue 24.
Claus, the Illini or the Boilermakers?
Well, I was trying to research this game, and I came across an article about an online fight between the Purdue student body and the Texas student body over their drums. Apparently, Purdue has a big bass drum, and Texas has Big Bertha. Now, Christopher, I know you have a soft spot in your heart, Big Bertha, after all the nights she got you through after striking out at the rail in college. But I have to give the edge to Purdue in that one. And I'll give Purdue the edge in this game. I think it's an upset, Purdue 28 and Illinois 24.
Down to Waco we go. Baylor minus 2.5. Kansas State, man, they were right there against Texas, and the comeback fell short. 2 fumbles by a quarterback we all know. I'm going to start off here. I think Baylor starts to kind of right the ship. I think K-State plays and plays well but doesn't get it done. And I think Baylor gets it handled by a field goal, 30-27. Elijah.
I don't like whenever we came into this with the exact same score for the exact same team. I also had Baylor 30-27.
You took care of it last night.
Oh, in our stake of beer bet. I did, yeah. But no, we had the exact same score here, and usually I change it up, but I'm not going to do it because I do think Baylor also gets a 3-point win. They cover against Kansas State, and it's nothing against Kansas State. I just do really like this Baylor team at home, so 30-27 Baylor.
Connor.
I think Baylor wins as well. I'll go Baylor by a touchdown, let's say 34-27.
Claus, Waco, or the Little Apple?
Well, I agree with all three of you. I think this is going to be a pretty good game, pretty close game. And I know Baylor hasn't had the year they were wanting to have, but if there's one thing I know about the folks in Waco, it's they'll rally behind a leader. And I think Dave Aranda is a pretty good leader, especially one named Dave down in Waco.
Took me a second.
I will change my score. I'll say Baylor 31 and Kansas State 28.
Oh, that was a hand grenade when it took me a second.
Especially named Dave. We're going to go down to Starkville, Georgia, at Mississippi State. This is my heart versus my head, but we love the Pirate here on the show. It's been so good to us. I'm going to just say Mississippi State scares the heck out of Georgia. I want to say upset. I can't do it, but I will say cover. And Georgia 28, Mississippi State 21. Elijah.
Will Rodgers with that Mississippi State offense, he's something special. I do think they're going to put some points on the board against this Georgia defense. Not many teams have been able to do it this year. I think Mississippi State is able to. I don't think they get a win. I think they are going to scare the living bejesus out of Georgia, though, in this one. Give me Georgia 35, Mississippi State 31.
Okay, so even a little bit tighter. Connor, what do you think?
I'm not very sold on Mississippi State like you two are, and I'm even more sold on Georgia after last week. So I'm going to be bold here. I'm going to pick Georgia to cover 37-20.
Come on, Connor. It's a letdown spot.
That's exactly it. Right after the Tennessee game. That's more of this math for me anyway. Claus, what happens here? The Pirates strike again, or does Georgia keep on Georgia-ing?
Well, I think it's kind of ironic that Georgia's playing a Mike Leach coach team. I took to calling them the Craig Jameses after the way last week they killed number 5 Hooker's Heisman campaign. So I think it's a letdown game, too. I'll take Georgia to win but not cover 31 and Mississippi State 24.
Down to Austin we go. TCU unbeaten. TCU in the playoff. And old Bevo at 6-3. They moved to 7-3. And Texas, good football team. TCU has been living a charmed life, and they've made their own breaks. I think the setup's there, and I think this is where TCU falls. I think Texas wins but doesn't cover. It's a touchdown ball game, 42-35. Give me Texas over TCU.
As you said, I also think TCU is living a charmed life. I think they're a very good football team. I don't think they're a great football team. I don't think they're a college football playoff football team, and therefore I think they're going to slip up at some point. I think that is this week. I think Texas beats them and covers. Give me Texas 35 and TCU 24.
Connor.
I got Bevo and the boys down in Austin. I think they win 28-24, so TCU gets a cover.
Claus, what happens here down in Austin?
Well, I had read on a message board where UT fans were saying we should prepare ourselves to get hosed by the Big 12 officials. And first of all, glad you're getting to see how the other half has lived for the past 20-some years. But second of all, it's about time that someone took one to the bully, and Texas has been a bully. And if there's anyone who probably had to learn how to deal with bullies from a young age, it'd be a fella named Sonny Dykes. So I'll take TCU 28 and Texas 24.
We'll come on back to end the forecast. Nebraska-Michigan on the way with Hail.
Miss us?
Come here, brother. Give me a hug. Bring it in for the real thing.
We're on call for you. Catch the podcast at hailvarsity.com, the ESPN Lincoln app, or download them on iTunes.
Saddle up, partner.
Back to Hail Varsity Radio.
One final time, Hail Varsity Radio continues here from the Hail Varsity Club in La Vista. Come on by and get your seat for Nebraska-Michigan tomorrow. Kickoff 2:30 ABC. And we are here for the weekend edition from noon to 2. Myself, Elijah Herbel, Connor Clark, and we are ready to go to see if Nebraska can, make a game of it. Guys, let's, without further ado, crank up the music. Get back to the forecast. Nebraska will, I agree with what Gregg Henson, our Michigan insider, said earlier. I think it's a little bit of hope going into half and then too much Michigan. Give me the Wolverines 37 and Nebraska 10. But Nebraska gets the cover because the line right now at 30.5. Elijah.
Yeah, I'm with you in that I do think Nebraska can cover in this football game. And it's, as you said, Michigan, how they win football games this year is they really exert their will on you in the second half. Their offensive line starts to do some damage. Nebraska's defensive line is probably going to be gassed once we get to the third and fourth quarter. That's where they're going to win this football game. I think Nebraska's going to hang around, as you said, in the first half. Michigan does some damage in the third quarter, calls off the Dogs, but Nebraska is able to cover in this football game. I'm going to go 41-17. Nebraska gets a tight cover here, but they do, in fact, cover against the Wolverines. 30.5 is just so many points for how this Michigan team is built.
Well, Connor, what happens?
Well, it's so many points, but you have to take into consideration who Michigan is playing, and I don't know. I've gone back and forth on this all week. I'm going to say Nebraska does cover. I think they lose 38-10 at the Big House.
Claus, what do you think here? Big House, backup quarterbacks, Mickey and the coaching carousel. What happens? 30.5, too many or just right?
I think it's entirely too many. In fact, I just hope that the Michigan fans have stocked up on their X-Men comics, because that's the only way they're going to see a Wolverine win this weekend. Nebraska 28 and Michigan 24.
Claus calling the outright victory, 28-24.
I like it.
Claus is all over Nebraska. This would be the biggest upset in college football since Jim Harbaugh, as a 41.5-point dog, upset Pistol Pete, the gum chewer of USC, back in 2007. Does that sound about right, Claus?
Could be.
Well,
sounds good to me, Christopher.
Let's see if Paul Castle, the ghost of us.
Too close. I might be coming up on Dave Matthews here. I don't know what I'm thinking at this point.
Yeah, no, I get you. Well, Claus, behave yourself, and we'll tip a beer at Dave tomorrow night.
Okay.
There he goes. Good to spend time with Clauseborne as always. Friday forecast, Hail Varsity Radio. We are here at the Hail Varsity Club in La Vista. Great crowd tonight, great food and drink specials. You want something for lunch in Omaha, man, you get down to La Vista here between the Embassy Suites and, of course, Cabela's. They've got the burger, the fries, the soda.
Yeah, I got to figure
for $10.
I got to figure out where I'm sleeping tonight. I got to look around, and I'm not making the drive back up here. I got to find a comfortable spot, maybe back in the kitchen where I can lay my head and rest
It's
tonight.
highly illegal. Connor, we will talk to you tomorrow and talk to you at noon.